Please welcome Rhys Thomas, Area Vice President, UK and Ireland.
Good morning. Good morning. God, this is a massive stage. Very slimming. Good morning. Come back down here. Good morning. A very warm welcome to BMC Exchange 2018. Croeso cynnes, as we say in Wales. I can actually get my steps up here. You know, as part of my personal transformation, I'm going digital. And I've got one of these Garmin watches, and I've got it speaking to my personal trainer's phone. So he'll be there now going, oh, his heart rate's up. He's getting a few steps in. He's out jogging. I know that 75% of the room are going, this guy's got a personal trainer? He's new. He's already got 15 pounds off me, actually, in 6 weeks, so he's all right. Thank you. I wasn't actually expecting a round of applause for that. When I told my 14-year-old son that I'd lost a stone, he looked me up and down and went, well, you're still fat, Dad. Anyway, I am excited. Heart rate is up because I'm excited. We've got a wonderful agenda for you today. We've got some fantastic speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce the speakers we'll be hearing from this morning. First of all, we'll be hearing from BMC's President and CEO, Mr. Peter Leave. Thank you, Peter, for making the journey from the US to be here. Same thank you to David Kramer, who's also made his way over from the US. David is President of our Digital Service Operations business. And David will be joined by three of our customers. Thank you to those customers from Department of Work and Pensions, from BMC, and from the Bank of England, who we'll be hearing from on the stage this morning. I'll then hand over to my good mate, Steve Hamilton. Steve is going to oversee our Customer Innovation Awards this morning. And finally, we have a guest speaker in the form of Dr. Lyle Unger, easy for me to say, from the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Unger is a renowned specialist in the areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So very much looking forward to hearing from Dr. Unger this morning. Before we do, I would like to say a few thank yous. First of all, I would like to thank our sponsors this morning. These are all key partners of BMC, both technology partners whose solutions enhance our own and vice versa, and support, implementation, managed service partners who help our customers accelerate time to value and get more value from their investments in, or your investments in BMC solutions. Special call out to John Mohan and his team from Fusion Business Solutions. Thank you, John and team, again this year for being, for the second year, running our platinum sponsors. The second group of people I'd like to thank are, collectively, are the analysts who are here today. We have the analysts out in force today, actually. I believe we have a record number of analysts attending today's events. We now know where they're sitting. Thank you for your continued interest in BMC. And, of course, this is first and foremost a customer event, and the people I'd most like to thank are the people who make up the majority of the room today. You, our customers. Thank you for being here, for giving up a day of your valuable time. Thank you for making the trip to be here. I know we've got people from all over the UK. We've got people from some of the Nordic countries. I believe there are some people over from France and from the Netherlands, I believe. And of course, Exchange wouldn't be Exchange without the usual representation of Irish raiders making their way over. Look forward to seeing you for a pint tonight, my Irish friends. So thank you very much to our customers for being here. But a second thank you from me, and a special thank you from me to our customers for your continued support in BMC. If I let you into a little secret, we've just finished the end of our first half of our financial year at the end of September. We saw significant growth in the UK and Irish business in the first quarter and then posted a record second quarter. So it would be amiss of me not to stand up in front of so many of our customers and thank you collectively for that contribution. Thank you. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We've developed an application to help you get the most out of the day. You can download this if you go to the App Store and search on BMC event, one word. You can download it for a mere £9.99. No, I'm kidding. It's free, obviously. The second thing, while I've now invited the whole room to get their phones out, we may as well have you tweeting. Please do use the hashtag BMC Exchange, if you wouldn't mind, so that you can see what one another have to say about the event. And the final bit of housekeeping, I am required, probably GDPR this, the dreaded GDPR, to tell you that we are video recording this. There will be a photographer making their way around the event as various parts of the day, so if you didn't tell your boss you're coming here today, I'm really sorry. I want to pivot back to that growth that I mentioned, and when I think about that, I think about our relevance to you, our customers, but I also think about your relevance and the relevance of the innovations that you're developing bring to us and to me and to my family and my household. We've got customers such as Netflix who spring to mind because I've got teenage kids. Disney Pixar's another one that features heavily in the Thomas household, but there's one company that's probably had more of a digital disruption and been more responsible for the digital transformation of the Thomas family household than any other in recent months, and that's this company. Can I have a show of hands? Who recognizes this logo, this company? Quite a few of you. If I were to tell you that Epic Games is a computer games developer based out of South Carolina in the US. They've been going for quite a while. They've been going since about 1991. But a year ago, they released this game. Yeah, I may as well have said, who's got kids between the ages of 7 and 17 that they haven't seen for the last 6 months? Because they've been up in their rooms playing Fortnite, right? In fact, my brother-in-law is a policeman with the South Wales Police, and he refers to this as PC Fortnite because he says it's more effective at keeping kids off the streets than any ASBO ever has been. It's certainly played a part in our lives. Let me introduce you to some of the players. So this scary-looking chap is SCK Tivener, a prolific player of the game, a very good player of the game, as his win ratio would suggest. Let me draw your attention to the expenditure in the last 6 to 8 months on this gaming platform from Tivener. That's hard-earned pocket money, birthday money, lawn mowing money, car washing money. I can say that because I know, because Tivener is actually my 10-year-old son, Harry. Now, let me introduce you to a second player. Interesting choice of avatar, given that this is my 14-year-old son, Ellis. We all made choices at the age of 14. Not quite as avid a player, but still £70 of his pocket money has gone to Epic Games. The third and final player I want to introduce you to is this scary-looking chap. Yeah, I think you've jumped to the punchline there, guys. So this was my pathetic attempt to connect with my children while I'm away traveling. They refused to play with me. I'm a noob, apparently. Now, while I do share the same reservations that are well publicized that many parents have about the amount of time and money that children are spending playing this game, I have to also admit that I have a sneaking admiration for what Epic Games has achieved. Imagine being in that meeting where the CIO was told, right, we'll launch this game, and then we need daily updates from you because our revenue will depend on it. We need weekly releases of new functionality. We need 12 weekly major releases, almost a rewrite of the game. Oh, and by the way, the platform will need to scale affordably to what transpired to be 10 million players within 2 weeks of launch, and 125 million players today, just 12 months on. That translates to 96 million events hitting this platform every minute. Of course, it has to be secure. It's a key target for the hackers, not just because of the revenue that flows through the platform, but also because bringing down Fortnite would be major kudos for a hacker. And of course, they have a social responsibility to keep the platform available 24/7, because anything less would result in about 100 million concurrent tantrums in 122 countries around the world. That's exactly what they have achieved. And my admiration comes from the thought that I wonder if it was even possible to do that 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. And we at BMC are very aware that you, our customers, irrespective of what market you're in, whether it's financial services, manufacturing, distribution, public sector, and so on and so forth, are facing similar challenges and are presented with similar opportunities. And so the objective of today and the objective of Exchange is just that, to enable us to exchange ideas, exchange points of view with one another and between our customer community. So why don't we get on with it? It is my enormous pleasure to have the opportunity to welcome to the stage our first speaker, our President and CEO, Mr. Peter Leave.
Good morning. Welcome to London, and welcome to BMC Exchange. We are really excited to have you here with us. We have, as you heard from Reese, an amazing day planned, and most importantly, you will hear from customers today on stage. Customers who are going to share their story, their digital journey, and this need, perhaps more pronounced than ever before, to run and reinvent. And we're going to spend some time and talk about that. Running the business operationally with more on the docket, more on your shoulders, more expectations, more demands than ever before. And in many cases, less budget. While budgets are going to reinvention around a new digital normal, around a strategic transfer, around a new digital buyer and user. And this is no longer the mode of hyperbole and hope. This is happening. And we have to talk about what it means for us. We represent and we think in terms of the enterprise. And we're going to spend time talking about both running and reinventing today. We know that expectations have increased. We know that this digital normal is upon us. It's true for customers. It's true for our customer's customer. It's true in business. It's true in life. We also know that there is simply more. There's more data that needs to be turned into usable information, more data that needs to be protected in a secure fashion. There are more networks, more applications, more multi-cloud, more endpoints. There is simply more. While that's happening, we see a new mode of IT. And this is something that's very different. For years, we talked about bimodal IT, or influence IT, or shadow IT. But other organizations are no longer in the shadows. And frankly, they have budget. So what we see happening today is different. Because IT ops, to a degree we just discussed, has more on their shoulders than ever before, but it's not just IT ops. It's apps ops, and dev ops, and sec ops, and business units, and HR, all making buying decisions. And they believe that IT is in their purview too. So it's not only a lot as it relates to the widening of IT, but there's more on the shoulders of IT to make sure all of this is going well, and there's a mechanism to bring these pieces together. So that's happening. What else is happening? There's another phenomenon. It's not new, but it's different, and that is computing costs. Moore's law. It still holds true. The cost of computing has continued to come down. And that has been to the benefit of the enterprise for decades. We've all lived this. Unfortunately, it's to the benefit of another group, the cyber criminal. Because the cyber criminal can now launch a cyber attack in a fraction of the time, at a fraction of the cost, in an automated fashion, and they only have to get it right once. So I want to be careful that we're not too flippant when we talk about reinvention, that we don't lose sight of what it takes to actually run the place. There's a lot on your shoulders, and at BMC we're thinking about both. From a reinvent standpoint, markets are changing. We like to look at what the markets are doing in addition to what customers are doing. And in a digital world, with digital transition, at the heart of digitization is the need to move quickly. Speed does matter. Speed is going to be a differentiator as to who wins and who loses. We also know that you must be agile. We speak about agility constantly at BMC. Agile development, agile software development, agile approach. I have a friend who runs a manufacturing company, agile manufacturing. But it also aligns to the needs of a new consumer and a new buyer. Agile in the form of being adaptable to a different stakeholder. And you'll hear about that today too. And importantly, the organization must be more efficient. ROI has to improve, costs have to come down, productivity has to go up. It can't simply be a case study for years and years. It actually has to mean something. And in our case, we think about what you do. Our customers are the heartbeat of our company. You are the voice that matters most. And in certain segments, we're seeing this happen in a substantive way. One market that's very interesting, and I think at times misunderstood, is financial services. And a great customer who's here today, JP Chase, who represents the largest bank by asset value in the US. They also happen to be a mainframe customer, an enterprise customer, a services customer, is going through transition as well. And as we've studied their organization, we see this in a few forms, one of which aligns to this need for speed and efficiency. And JPMC developed something called COIN, Contract Intelligence, AI/ML, machine learning for contracts. And they've analyzed credit agreements, commercial loan agreements, and you can imagine a bank of this scale has a lot of them. They analyzed 12,000 commercial credit agreements over the course of a year. And they realized that they were spending approximately 360,000 hours per year doing initial analysis of these documents. Expensive hours, I might add, because it's work being done by lawyers and loan officers. And with AI/ML, with COIN, they've turned 360,000 hours into seconds. This is tangible. They've also seen a significant reduction in errors. So when we say it's sort of interesting to talk about, but it's not substantive, it's actually happening. This is machine learning at work. Chase is also interesting because they've gone another route. They stepped back, as many companies do, and evaluated their TAM. What's our total market? What's our total available? What's our total addressable? Where are we playing? Now, Chase is also the largest mobile banking entity in the US. They have 31 million mobile banking customers. But they stepped back and evaluated their market, and they realized, as many of us do, 35% of the global workforce by 2020 will be millennials. 50% of the workforce in the US by 2021 will be millennials. So they said to attack the new market, to continue to be the largest, to continue to win, they have to be a bank for millennials. And they had to think about not doing what they've always done. What have they always done? When they were going to grow, they built branches. But they didn't go that route. They didn't go brick and mortar. They didn't build new branches. They didn't buy ATMs. They realized efficiency-wise, their cost structure would be markedly different with this new demographic. In many ways, good. It's 96% less expensive to deposit a check digitally than for a human being to walk into the bank branch, interact with a human teller, and deposit the same check. Different structure, different cost, different efficiency model. But importantly, they also had to understand that that digital native wanted to behave differently as well. So they developed different applications with the needs of the millennial in mind. One of those was a mechanism to track savings. They developed automatic savings tools. And millennials would share, which most of us never would, how much they wanted to save. And once they reached a threshold, they were allotted a certain amount of money for spending that they predetermined. When they did so, in many cases, they received an SMS with an emoji giving them a thumbs up saying you reached your goal. I have never received an emoji from my bank. It's a different mindset with a different cost structure, with different speed, different agility. And as they developed this entirely new process, they also did it in an agile fashion because they developed what's called FIN, from concept to coding and coding to implementation and launch in a year. That had never happened before. So we're seeing a new phenomenon that is digitization. And we can talk more and more about financial institutions, and we're happy to have JPMC here with us. A bit closer to home, in another market, we also see an interesting phenomenon. And that's something that impacts some of you who are citizens in the UK. Department for Work and Pensions, we are thrilled to have you here. They're also tackling a big problem that probably impacts you and you may not realize it, and that's gangs attempting to steal, attempting benefits fraud. And we're seeing this in a significant way around the world, but I thought it was interesting because of what DWP has opted to do. And we'll share a quote that I will read because it's very much in the same vein. We carried out trials using algorithms that can identify different types of organized attacks on the welfare system. The algorithms reveal fake identity cloning techniques that are commonly used by fraudsters, which are only detectable by intelligent computer programs capable of searching for anomalies in billions of items of data. Large-scale abuse of the welfare system in this country is costing any of you who are taxpayers roughly £40 million a week. This is tangible. This is real. This is happening. So the voice of the customer is impacting BMC's understanding of what markets are doing, transition that is happening, and the need to both run and reinvent. We're also listening to executives. And this survey is now about 18 months old, so we expect it's going to go up and to the right. But you can see that 50% of CEOs are very clear that their industries will be transformed digitally. Their industries. And this is happening across industries. We just outlined two. We also know, importantly, for those of us who have to actually make things work and happen, that the vast majority increase profit margin expectations by seeing digitization increase the expectations of profitability in these companies. That means it's got to be tangible. And we know that product value is derived from digital, and that's only increasing as well. So it's easy sometimes for the CEO to make this statement or set a mandate. Operationally, it actually has to come to fruition. And for those of us in the mode of having to drive these behaviors, you can see that 88% of 3,000 IT professionals around the world surveyed are in this mode of either being desirous of change or building and scaling to make it happen. And we can't forget this ever important concept that while we're being asked to change and transition digitally, we have to still run our organizations. Those are important feeding mechanisms for our company. And at BMC, we use these as a guide. We use these to inform in decisions we're making and investments we're making, and most importantly, in ensuring that we are aligned to your success. What you'll hear about today has to do with really a three-pronged, largely interrelated approach to our business. Our business impacting and affecting and helping your business. It starts with the mode of ensuring that we provide great service to you, that we provide service for you to provide great service to your customer. And customers have told us again and again, we need to start by taking an inventory. In the enterprise, in many cases, we're not always sure of where everything is, and we're not sure where we have it. This means we have to be able to discover assets, discover IT assets on-prem and via multi-cloud. And we provide that in a way that no one else does, in a better way than anyone else does in the world. And what we've realized, it's not just about taking inventory, it's also about elimination of blind spots. Because if you do not know what you have, you cannot protect your organization. You can have the best intrusion detection in the world, but you can't protect what you don't know you have. We also know that customers are moving into a different mode, as we just discussed. And you'll hear about, from our teams today, cognitive differentiation. Actual AI ML, cognitive capabilities with use cases. You'll hear about what we're doing with bots, with IT ticketing, for level 0, level 2, ultimately level 3. Differentiation that BMC has invested in, that we're bringing to market, that's in use with customer examples. And we know that your customers expect omni-channel capabilities. They want to use the channel of their choice at the time they choose to use it. And importantly, we know that you need to use the cloud of your choice. Your cloud decision is not incumbent upon us to predetermine. We love our cloud offer, but importantly, we know that many of you choose your own cloud, or AWS, or Azure, or public clouds, Google. We provide the cloud choice that you have determined is important. This is multi-cloud differentiation. And we'll hear about today containerization and differentiation in ensuring that you have cloud readiness that you predetermine for us with you. This is different than what others are doing in the space. Now, servicing your business and servicing your customers is of the utmost importance, along with ensuring that we operate effectively. Operationally, we think in terms of preemptive, preventative. What are we doing to make sure that you have the performance monitoring capabilities you need, the capacity planning? We have so many customers who are under capacity, over capacity, and the costs are significant. We take this as a mechanism to ensure readiness. Now, that also applies to digital transformation, because so many of the applications that were significant for so many years on-prem or in the data center are transitioning. And some should not transition to the cloud. But it's incumbent upon us to help you determine prior to making the transition whether it will be secure and whether it will be cost-effective. And those are the types of solutions you're going to hear about today. Preemptively assessing whether or not it costs more or less. And once you determine it is cost-effective to do so, with whom? The ability to assess which cloud provider is best for you. These are tools that we've invested in. And this is part of the business and part of the reason that the UK team and teams around the world are continuing to show amazing growth at BMC. We also speak the language of security across the stack. And it's not only security related to helping protect the organization. We know that another WannaCry is likely to hit. And we know in the widening of IT that SecOps may hand that problem to IT ops. And remediation preemptively is really important. What do we have to ensure that we are able to remediate with haste? What matters most? Customer data, employee information? These are the types of solutions that we're eager to talk to you about, because this is what you told us matters. Now, I have to put a plug in for another team, a team that has grown 11 of the last 13 quarters. That's a revenue statement, and most people don't know that we are, while other organizations have not, who have scale, and that's our mainframe team. Our mainframe business is also growing because we're taking share and because we are investing. We are investing in security. We just recently made an announcement on that front, an acquisition. And we also are investing in what we call AMI, AI for mainframe. So for those who are in the mainframe world, some of you are, please spend time with our team and hear about what we're doing, hear about what we've done of late, and we'd love your input on what we should continue to do, because at BMC we are continuing to invest and win in mainframe. Now, all of these pieces have to come together in a form that matters a lot, and a lot of people are now talking about automation. But automation is not new for BMC. We are very proud of where we are as it relates to workload automation. We have the best workload automation suite in the world, and have had and will continue to have. So we think in terms of the best dashboard, the best search, the best security, the best GUI. But we haven't stopped there. Back to investment aligned to a new normal. We've invested significantly in this space. We are now growing at a rapid clip in what's called managed file transfer. And importantly, we now have AI capability applications around the significant transition in the world of development. We now have APIs and readiness for a different user. So when those applications are developed in a cloud-native sense and have to come back into the enterprise, how do we help that happen? That way we're covering it from both angles. It's non-binary. It's not just apps moving to the cloud. It's new apps who have to safely and securely move into the enterprise. A lot happening on that front. And ensuring, as customers have outlined matters a lot, data is turned into usable insights. All of this is surrounded by a wonderful wrapper that we call services, managed services, professional services, education services. So as we think about what's happening in the market, the truism of running and reinventing, the reality of operationally running your business with a preemptive and preventative gauge on things that matter most, while helping you transition to a new normal, BMC has been hard at work. Reese talked about this importance of exchange, and I want to make sure we make this abundantly clear that exchange is not just us delivering all of the insights that we've garnered over the last year or all of the new solutions. We also want to make sure that we are listening. At BMC, listening to our customers is a non-negotiable, as your voice is the most important. So exchange is a bit of both. We want to share and show, but we also want to listen. So please take the time to share with us your thinking as well. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you in advance for what we believe will be a fantastic day. And thank you for your partnership. Thanks.
Work. It goes where it needs to go. It goes hybrid cloud, public cloud, business cloud, multi-cloud, and back to the data center. But the real work is in managing IT's work. To see the costs, to know it's secure, to improve automation while dialing up the speed, to turn complex into, that was simple. This is where work meets BMC multi-cloud management. This is where work works best. BMC, the multi-cloud management company.
Please welcome David Kramer, President, Digital Services Operations.
Good morning, London. Good morning. Great to be here. Reese, you're right. This is a pretty big stage. You get up here and you have to look both ways. I'm really excited to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Kramer. I'm the president of Digital Service Operations inside BMC. I'm excited to be here for a few reasons. First, I've got a great session. The good news is you're not going to listen to me talk the whole time. I've got 3 customers, and then I've got another BMC employee who's going to come up, and we're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about what BMC is doing around digital transformation and around this concept of run and reinvent. I'm also really excited to be here because I'm in the UK, and I'm going to get to see some football, proper football for those wondering. So that's great. And I'm also excited because I love the food and drink. We'll emphasize the drink a little bit more in the UK, but we just don't get the beer that you guys have here. So I'm excited to be here. I hope you guys have a great session. Let's get started with the messaging. So BMC, and Peter talked about this, is focused on this concept of run and reinvent. And as Peter said, this isn't a new concept. Anyone who's been in IT operations has been dealing with this for the last couple of decades. Budgets haven't been increasing, you're being asked to do more, and at the same time, new teams, new technologies, new processes are showing up. You're being told drive innovation, public cloud, DevOps, new capabilities, machine learning, big data. You're also being told master IT, keep all those old systems up and running, keep performance going, and in fact, do it at higher levels of efficiency. You're being asked to unify, take all those old things that run our business, those, quote unquote, legacy systems, and integrate them with all these new modern systems of engagement that the teams are developing. And then last, and certainly not least, and an important part of my business is stabilize and optimize. Make sure that you're not just running those systems, but that you're constantly optimizing them to gain more efficiency, more performance, more throughput. to deliver results to the business. So this theme, run and reinvent, it's a challenge, it's a theme, it's something that you'll hear us talk a lot about today. Now, when you're moving fast and you're trying to innovate, BMC knows a lot about this. One of the things we've been doing for the last, decade is our own journey of moving to agile development, releasing new solutions and innovating. And BMC's approach is very, very important because in this modern society, one of the common trends that we've seen a lot of lately is the platform vendor. Just build your app on my platform, build your system and hook it into my platform. And there's some real powerful platforms out there, but you've got to look at open, you've got to look at modular and scalable because normally, and most people in the room know this, one size does not fit all. And so BMC is committed to being a vendor who brings best-of-breed solutions across a wide set of operational challenges, whether it be service management, automation, operations, or mainframe. So when we talk about our open approach, it's really rooted in our history. And I'm going to show the same slide that Peter showed. I won't present it to you. I'm actually going to use this slide as an anchor throughout the presentation. So when we go through, you'll see me continue to talk about required capabilities. These are things that BMC believes are really important to accomplish the goals, to overcome those challenges. And in this session, we're going to spend time talking, as I said, with 3 customers and 1 BMC employee about the challenges and how BMC is helping people attack those. So let's move forward now to those opportunities and challenges and get into it. So one of the first ones, and this is a very obvious one, is cloud. Multi-cloud, the idea that now there's a new environment that your developers, that your applications run in. But it's not just public cloud. I was having a very interesting dialogue before this presentation, and one of the customers I was talking to said, the funny thing is we're actually investing in new data centers. While we believe that public cloud is a very valuable and interesting thing that's emerged in our industry, we don't believe that we're going to effectively use public cloud for most workloads because of the cost, because of the proprietary nature of these clouds, because of the fact that all of these clouds that are out there aren't actually as interoperable as we'd like them to be today. So it's interesting, when you think about cloud, don't just think public. Recognize that lots of companies are out there either consolidating data centers and modernizing them, or in some cases building new data centers. And certainly a big part of what's happening in the data center, Peter mentioned this, containerization. Private clouds used to be all about VMs and resource pools, and nowadays we're seeing private clouds that are container-based, and we're seeing private clouds internally in the enterprise that offer the same types of capabilities that you would get from the public cloud. So cloud, both an opportunity and a big challenge, and one of the things you'll hear repeatedly is how BMC is helping customers do multi-cloud management. The second one, DevOps. This is near and dear to my heart as a guy who builds products for a living. For about the last 15 years, I've been working nonstop with my customers and my developers to figure out ways to deliver innovation quicker. And I'm a big believer in DevOps because I think it bridges a gap. It brings 2 groups who had to work together more closely together. And we'll talk a lot about the challenges and opportunities as companies attempt to release more software, release that software faster, and then let's not forget, we're going to release it into a whole bunch of new cloud environments. So the challenge, pretty big here. The third thing we'll talk about is data, and just the massive amount of data out there. The volume is overwhelming. There's another part of the equation that's also important, is what do you do with data? How do you take advantage of data? Peter gave some great examples of how DWP, JP Morgan Chase, are analyzing the data sets that they have available to them so that they can make more informed decisions, so that they can save money. And one of the things you'll see as we talk about data and the challenge and opportunity is how do our customers tap into the data in our systems? How do they get at the ticket data, the performance and configuration data, or the event data, the workload data that we have in our tools? And how do customers bring that information together to provide a better experience for their customers? And last, and certainly not least, security. One of the things that I believe that we're in the middle of is just like the developers moving closer to the operational teams in order to get some efficiencies, we're seeing the exact same thing happen in security. Security teams are asked to cross the line and help work with development teams and operations teams to fix problems before they get into production, to make things more secure before they get released, and maybe most importantly, to be able to automatically fix issues as they occur. So as we talk about these opportunities and challenges, what we're really focusing on here is the things that our customers have told us matter to them that they're trying to tackle, and then we're going to bring a series of customers up to talk about how it is that BMC helped them in their journey against these opportunities and challenges. So let's jump into the first one and talk a little bit more about this multi-cloud reality that we live in. You know, the bubbles on the screen here, almost none of these are new things. We had processes and teams, we had environments, we had third parties. All of this existed in our old world, in the classic IT ops world. But this new multi-cloud world, as we build out this slide, you begin to see the next layer of complexity that teams are having to deal with. We've got lots of new environments now. We have multiple public cloud vendors, multiple private cloud vendors. We have lots of new tools, and with those tools come new vulnerabilities that I've got to be aware of, new compliance regimes that I have to follow. Maybe some new subscribers, some new services have shown up. This is multi-cloud. This is the world that our customers are now living in. And it's very, very different than classic in-tier applications on IT stacks, 10, 15, 20 years ago when we were all talking about the data center and thinking about IT operations management. So it's a very, very different world, a new reality that we have to live in. Lots of players, lots of choices. So when we think about the opportunities and challenges related to cloud, we came up with 3. The first is a simple one. Just enable multi-cloud. Your customers are asking for access to these new services, these new tools, these new platforms, and you need to enable that, but you need to do it in a secure and effective way. You've got to reduce friction, right? The last thing that people want to do is find that it's just as hard to get access to the new resources as it was to get access to the old resources, because that was their big complaint. Hey, IT, you deliver pretty well when you deliver, but it just takes you a long time. I'm going to go to this Amazon place, and I'm going to get it in 30 seconds. Well, one of the challenges is as IT takes over cloud management, they can't put impediments in place that now make access to an Amazon system take the same time it did to get an old physical system back in the day. And then governance. No one likes governance, but we all recognize its importance. I told an interesting story before the meeting. When my teams began their DevOps journey, they all formed agile sprint teams and told me how fast they were going. And I said, that's great. And then I asked one question. I said, so who on the team is responsible for the operational aspects? And they looked at me strange. And I said, here's an example. Who made sure that we did the code scan that checks for vulnerabilities in our software so that if we release software, we know we're releasing software that's trusted? And of course, all the developers looked at each other, and that was when I realized, hey, I don't have anybody in the operations world on this team. I've got a bunch of developers who are trying to go fast. They don't think about governance. And the reason they don't want operations in there is because governance slows things down. So the answer here has to be simplified governance. Least, like minimum viable governance is a new phrase that I've been hearing. So if we reference back, we talk about cloud management and migration, and we reference back to the capabilities chart, you can see that we've changed the capabilities slightly here. We're highlighting those capabilities that are most valuable in this specific opportunity and challenge. And obviously, the first one there under service is discovery and having visibility across all the cloud environments, whether they be public or private. And not just visibility into the physical resources, but also the services that are running in those environments. Very, very critical. As we look to the right on operations, obviously performance management of your cloud environments, that's a mouthful, security and compliance of those environments. And then Peter talked about this. One of the things that we've seen in the last year is a renaissance in capacity planning, capacity forecasting, and it's primarily driven through cost. People are trying to understand where to place applications most cost effectively. Is Amazon cheaper than Azure? What's it going to look like if I put it in my private cloud? And so certainly the ability to optimize cost and capacity is an important challenge that we're helping customers with as it relates to cloud. And then finally, running application workflows across these environments, handling big data in these environments through automation. That's the third part from a required capabilities or key capabilities perspective when we see cloud and think about it. Now, BMC is not looking at cloud kind of single-handedly. We have actively partnered in the industry because we recognize that in order for us to deliver the capabilities that our customers are asking for, we've got to work very closely with the cloud providers. And you'll notice the names up here. We've got, 4 what you would call traditional cloud providers, but we also included Salesforce because, number one, we have a large partnership with Salesforce, but number two, remember my multi-cloud slide. It's not just the infrastructure anymore. It's cloud services. It's applications that are integrated in. So when you think about BMC and you think about BMC's modern cloud readiness, AWS, Google, Azure, Oracle, and Salesforce, big partnerships. And as you look across the bottom, you can see those categories that we talked about a little bit earlier. Cloud migration capabilities, DevOps capabilities, and operation capabilities in the cloud. And let's pivot just a little bit so I can bring my first customer up. When we talk about cloud operations at BMC, and this is near and dear to my heart because this is one of my products, TrueSight for cloud operations. We focus on performance, cost, and security. And it's a cloud operations platform that allows our customers to do those things I talked earlier. How are my environments performing? Is that the application? Is it the infrastructure that's having a problem? Where do I have capacity? Where can I be more secure and compliant? And here's a quick highlight of the TrueSight Cloud Cost Control screen. And what we're really talking about here as it relates to cloud operations, as I said earlier, this ability to plan, forecast, predict, and then optimize. How many people here have a cloud-first initiative in their company? Anyone? Okay, there's one. I remember back in the day when VM first or VM only was very popular. One of the things that our customers are talking about now is maybe cloud first isn't the best idea. Maybe what we should do is look at where the application will best perform, or where the application will cost us the least money to run, or where the application will be the most secure and compliant. And so as we look at cloud operations, we at BMC believe that one of the most important things you can do is map the performance to the capacity and cost so that you can make those decisions. And with that lead in, I'd now like to invite John Keegan from the Department of Work and Pensions on stage with me. John? Hey, John.
How you doing?
Thanks for joining me up here, John. So the Department of Work and Pensions, and that's the last time I'm going to say it because everybody knows it's DWP. DWP is the UK's biggest public service provider, and you guys are offering service to more than 20 million people. Tell me a little bit about DWP and your role.
So DWP is a fantastic place to work, really, really different. So we care for the citizens. We pay £170 billion a year out in benefits, getting people back to work, getting people to get ready for retirement. So it's really about caring for the citizen. The challenge with DWP is that we've been outsourced for IT for probably 20 years, 25 years. So everything from mainframe services, whether it's IBM MVSs or Fujitsu VME services, right the way through to model cloud-based applications we've got. So you name it from an IT point of view, we've got that, and we've got to get that to work together.
Got the Museum of Technology History at DWP, it sounds like. So you guys have been on a cloud journey. Tell us a little bit about the cloud journey and how you're attacking it and the role that BMC's played.
So we had a number of big contracts with some of the more traditional IT providers, a big hosting contract that had been in place for about 20 years. So we recognized that cloud first or cloud native was where we wanted to go to. But doing cloud native applications, you can't really do overnight. So universal credit, good example. New benefit, new policy, we could write that application from the ground up. I won't go into the policy-based side of things today, but a good example where you can go cloud native from the start, and we did that with AWS. On a lot of the other applications, be it the mainframe or AS400, IBM AX side of things, we had to work out a middle ground. So what we did is we worked with Arc, we built out some data centers, and we transferred those applications. We put in big, shiny new network. So we put in 40 gigabit connections between one provider's network and their data centers and our own. And over 12 months, we gradually moved those applications. To bring it back to the cloud story, we're also putting a gateway in place, and we're peering into AWS and Azure and ServiceNow, and we're gradually now transforming those applications and moving them to cloud.
That's great. And so TrueSight's a big part of the journey that you guys are on. Talk a little bit about how you're using the TrueSight operations platform.
So TrueSight gives us that end-to-end glue. So we've got what we call our UXCC, User Experience Command Center. It's a fancy name for a NOC. But basically 24/7 operations. We've got one in Manchester, one in the Northeast, and we use TrueSight for giving those teams that visibility. So we've got BMC Discovery in there. We've got BMC feeding back into TrueSight. We've got Intuity in there for network discovery, but also federating other applications. So native cloud things, we've got Prometheus running in AWS, and that information then feeds through, so we've got that going into TrueSight. So it gives the operations team that single view across those multi-cloud environments.
That's great. Talk to us about what's next for DWP. Where's your cloud journey going to take you, and what's BMC going to do to help you in that next step?
So a couple of things really. One, it's about automation. So for the last 2.5 years, I was head of infrastructure within DWP. I've recently taken on a new role, about a month in, which is about production operations, and it really ties into the presentation before. We've had DevOps, and we've recognized that DevOps works okay, but how do you really operationalize that stuff? How do you check your code? What we're doing now is we're embedding reliability engineers into our digital hubs to transform the way that we operate those services. So we can take all these services that we've migrated into our own data center, move them to cloud native, move them to software as a service, and transform that in a way that we can still keep the wheels turning.
Great. John, thanks so much for joining me and sharing the DWP story.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, as you can see, DWP, a pretty impressive story and a pretty impressive use of our technology, not just in their data centers, but in the multi-cloud journey as well. So we've talked a little bit about the challenge and the opportunity around multi-cloud. Let's pivot to the next one, which is DevOps. And as I said, this one's near and dear to my heart. I work with developers every day of my life, love building software, and DevOps has been a godsend for me. It's really changed the way that I interact. And you can see that on the left, and I put myself in that group just if anybody's asking, when you look at DevOps and you talk to people about why they want to do it or the value they're going to get, you know, it's speed, it's faster releases, it's new features, it's modern, it's what the cool kids are doing. But when you go over and you talk to the operational teams, they say, yeah, that sounds great, but you are not thinking about how you're going to roll this into production. My example earlier where I asked my team, who's thinking about some of the basic operational aspects, the security aspects, right? This is that governance and control story. And you've got ITIL and classic process. You've got cost and performance. You've got all the proprietary apps and the legacy systems that the operations teams are dealing with that the DevOps teams, in a lot of cases, don't have to deal with. So when we think about DevOps, and my experience is that it is more about culture change than it is about anything else. Certain teams want speed, certain teams want stability, and you're asking them to come together and meet in the middle and balance. How fast can we go without breaking things? How quick can we go without having a catastrophe? And you know, Peter talked a little bit about in his section what people believe they're going to get from DevOps, what people believe they're going to get from these. And you can see here, 69% of the people that we talk to believe DevOps is going to lead to a drastic reduction in lead times. And you can see this is just another visualization where we talk about what's happening on the left side of the chart in the developer world, but we have the little infinity loop that shows it dropping over onto the operations side and then that feedback coming right back into development. And on a side note, one of the most important places for data analysis and analytics is that feedback loop, having the operations team share with the development team, well, how did it actually perform in production? Where were the capacity gaps, the configuration or security changes that we had to make when we moved it in? So as you can tell, DevOps, big topic, lots of interaction between teams. When we look at the imperatives around DevOps and the things that we want our customers to be able to do, the first is enable choice. Another sidebar conversation I was having with someone, and the gentleman said the hardest thing for my teams to convey to the people who build the software is that we don't actually want to see your GUI. We really want programmatic access. We just want to plug it in. We want to give customers a choice. You've got to enable self-service. You've got to enable people to get access to the tools and the systems that they want, the way that they want them. Second, you've got to do it in the context of the developer. They work with pipelines. When you do continuous delivery and you release software every day or every week, you drop your code into what's called a pipeline. So we need to accelerate pipelines and plug things into pipelines versus having separate steps that slow these pipelines down or have steps that are completely removed from the continuous delivery pipeline process. And then certainly collaboration, you know, the whole name dev and ops is about collaboration. So visibility, being able to see and share information, being able to have common information in a ticket about something you're working. Here's the infrastructure config, here's the application performance, here's the last 3 people to touch the system. Maybe this will help you figure out why the system isn't performing well or why we had this issue. So we're gonna go back to our capability slide that we've used a few times now, and here we'll reference those capabilities that we think are very critical for DevOps. And you'll see some similar capabilities on the last slide and some new ones. So we talk about continuous discovery. Once again, this idea of understanding where your resources are, not just your physical assets, but your virtual assets, your services. How are those services configured? Are they compliant? This is a really powerful part of the story. But it doesn't stop there, right? Integrating all that into issue tracking so that both developers and ops have a single source that they can look at the issues and the tasks that they need to accomplish. And certainly continuous configuration management is a big part of any DevOps initiative. I talked about this a little bit earlier, plugging security, plugging operations into your pipeline so that you know, is the environment I'm releasing code into secure? Is the environment configured correctly? Is performance management hooked up so I can take a before and after snapshot and understand when the new code rolled in, did we see a performance increase or did performance get worse? And finally, on the automation side, application orchestration and governance. Being able to release software is just one part of a DevOps process. There's tons of automated hooks and automated routines in a DevOps process. And again, almost all of those are API driven so that they can integrate into these new microservice apps and environments. So as we talk about DevOps, let's bring a customer up. I'd like to ask JP Morgan Chase, Ralph Ellis, to come join me on the stage. Thanks, Ralph. All right. Thanks, Ralph. Made the long journey across the stage to get here.
Yes.
Give you a second to catch your breath. You know, Peter talked about JPMC, huge bank, $2.5 trillion in assets. That's hard to even say. Tell me a little bit about the bank. Tell me a little bit about your role in the bank.
Okay, so yes, JP Morgan, large bank, lots of money. Sadly, most of it not in my bank account. And I will say, though, as a consequence, the role is a massive role from my point of view. I own the scheduling environment for the distributed world across the world, and that's all customers, all environments, and Control M, of course, is our tool of choice in that particular environment.
Great, so you're using Control M. Talk to us a little bit about how you're using Control M in that environment, both the traditional and the more modern use cases.
So traditional has been changing for a while. Most people have seen that the overnight batch processing, the Monday to Friday logic, the weekend, quarter end, it's still important. It does exist. People talk about it going away. It isn't going anywhere. But the modern developer also operates 24/7, 7 days a week. And they have a different requirement, and they don't want the traditional model, but they understand automation. So they want it to happen so that they don't have to stay up at night to run their batch or during the day, but they want access in a way that we have traditionally not provided. I mean, we started with self-service in a model that we thought was cutting edge, but compared to what we now see with DevOps, it was just a staging post. And now, with the introduction of version 9, there's a sea change in what the capability is in Control M, and that sea change has let us release that automation to a customer base that wouldn't traditionally have used it, or sadly, the teams that would come to you at the last minute saying, I've built this application over the last 2 years, and now I need to schedule it, and I've got a week before I go live.
I need your help.
And how do we, and that's what's changed with the introduction of APIs and jobs as code.
Yeah, that's great. So the use case you're talking about, for those who don't know, Control-M offered a new set of capabilities which was referred to as jobs as code. And it was the ability to have API access to the platform so that a developer could plug the jobs as code capabilities into their pipelines, just like I talked about, not have to go to a central source and wait and get to consume the service. And you had a funny comment when we were warming up. You said that a lot of your developers don't actually know what it is, what it does. Talk a little bit about that, the way that it's...
It's the holy grail, is actually, which will depress you, is to take the BMC logo off the front end and have it known as a scheduling automation tool and be agnostic as much as possible, because then you remove the proprietary care that people have for different tool sets and you concentrate on the function. So developers now have access to Control-M in their own common developer environment, as opposed to the traditional model where they come to you through a user interface or some command lines. We've gone out to them, we've embedded the API access using code, and that's driven two major differences. Firstly, the code that they develop is developed alongside the code that they're already writing for their application, so they do it earlier, much earlier. So you're actually seeing testing going on. Not that I have a bad opinion of developers, but they are starting to develop with a test environment mentality, which is fantastic.
That's rare.
And that's the first sea change that allows better results, and the traditional first night failures seem to have gone away, which is really good news. Yeah. So they like it, they use it, but by using code, they're detached from the proprietary nature of Control-M, and they're doing more in JSON. They understand the logic, they have definitions, they like to use Swagger. These are all terms I never thought I'd learn at my age, but everybody's had to learn.
Millennials are teaching us that.
They are, sadly, yes. Yeah, and they're doing it well. And if you don't join them, then you're going to be history. So.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the scale of the bank, and we talked a little bit about how you believe jobs as code is a game changer. Talk to us a little bit about the scale and maybe some history, where you've been and how you've grown, and then let's talk about what you see as the future, because when you shared with me over there, I was surprised at the growth rates, and then when you said you expected jobs as code to maybe even increase those growth rates.
Jobs as code is a game changer, without a doubt. Not just because it liberates people from having to come to the scheduler, not just because it integrates in their environment. So that's one sea change that everybody understands, that the code itself is being written by them at the same time, and they understand the methodology. They don't need to be Control-M schedulers, and they don't need complex batch in the traditional sense, but it's still complex, and it's still massive in scale, that what they need, because that's where it's differentiating now. The complex schedules of 1,000 jobs, one after each other, they're less likely to be brought out by developers, but they've still got 1,000 jobs, but in parallel. So they need the capability of the tool, they need scalability, and that scalability doesn't grow organically like it did. It grows overnight. So we will be next year in Control-M twice as large as we were last year. So,
and I think you told me last year you were twice as large as the previous year.
But we could see growth over the last few years. We could look at it and judge growth. The release of the API, jobs as code, has changed it in weeks, not in a year. We're not looking now at a graph based over a year. We're looking at a graph month by month that's exponentially growing as more customers use us in a way they were always there. Yeah. We thought maybe we had automation saturation, but actually now we find out we don't have. The second sea change that's come about is that they're not using the scheduler in the traditional model. They're not putting jobs in that run overnight, start at 8 o'clock at night, run till 6 o'clock in the morning. They're dynamically using the second option. They're taking their jobs as code, deploying it, using it as a one-off, and then destroying it almost like containers in a cloud mechanism. Sure. Throwing that away, because the next time they run it, the events that they're basing their scheduling automation on is slightly different. Yeah. And that's a complete difference. So Everybody talks about jobs as code and automation and the APIs as being accessed, but to a traditional tool. Well, they're changing the way they're using the tool.
So you're seeing some new use cases and new
We are.
capabilities
Yes,
out of the
exactly
jobs as
right.
code. That's great. What has this done for the bank? Where does this head in the future, and what benefits have you guys seen?
So it's providing a level of control at the same time as a level of flexibility not previously offered.
Right.
People understood the logic of separating developers from the production environment and found that easy to implement by putting controls that required 19 ways of signing in. An operator is used to the fact that he has to sign into the security systems. Right. Developers don't want to sign into security systems. They expect it to be on their desktop available to them. The protection needs to be behind the scenes. That's what you get with a code base that comes through a central gateway that can then be checked for standards, can then enforce safety margins that a developer didn't think about when he was first developing. Well, I'm sure he did think about it, of course. But,
of course they thought about it. Well, great. What's next for the bank and Control M?
So, cloud, both private and public, multiple cloud environments, all of those great things. Best thing that happened for us, I think, in the last couple of years was Amazon releasing AWS Batch. Until then, every developer thought that if you put OS on the end of cron, you got a new scheduling tool, and that was a great way of going. Right. It had all of the old problems, but they thought it was new. Then along came Amazon that recognized that scheduling in the big world actually needed a real environmental tool. And it's a great tool, it has its limits, but it does work where they use it, but it only works in Amazon. Right. Microsoft have their own scheduler in Azure. Everybody has their own scheduling capability, but everybody needs to link in a large environment to everybody else's environment. That's where the shift of Control M to a scheduler of choice in the central environment has been phenomenal. Because now everybody in the hybrid legacy environment, they called it legacy, now we're all moving away from everybody moving to the cloud. It's now hybrid. Yeah. So in that hybrid environment, I can schedule jobs, and we do schedule jobs to Amazon, to Azure, to on-premise, to our private clouds. Doesn't matter what the operating system is. The sea change, as I keep saying sea change, version 9 is a sea change, both from what the products offer and the way that you now allow us to deploy it. So we can get it implemented very, very quickly. So the next thing we're doing is what we're calling a hybrid deployment model. We've got customers in various markets that want to have total control of their scheduling environment. The traditional model meant that they also had to rely on administrators that were outside their regions, which against the geopolitical sort of controls is a bit of a problem. So we're looking at a federated release of Control M, where we deploy the complete product rather than just an agent. And in that model, again, the ability to standardize and yet deploy in a dispersed model is really, really significant. And that's where we're going to grow. Jobs as code will massively increase more. Across the federated environment, we'll be able to schedule in the different environments, and we'll do it safely. We will do it quickly. We've provably been able to take a lot of the people who just sat and watched Batch and take them out of the equation, give them more interesting jobs to do, and at the same time, allow developers access to production in a way that we control. So they get what they want, they think they're not being monitored and controlled, which is ideal, and as long as they don't do anything wrong, nothing operates against them, so they feel free.
That's
so
great.
it's that freedom.
I loved earlier, we were having a conversation, and the answer was that the developers think they've won. And I thought that was just a great way to frame it, because you'd been fighting an uphill battle trying to convince the development teams to pay attention and care. And then when you moved to a self-service model, you moved into their environment, your comment to me was, now the developers, they think they've won. The reality is that you've got your governance,
With our first self-service model, the biggest problem was that we had to implement standards and checkers and all sorts of things and enforce a centralized control. But each area of the firm had different rules and regulations and controls. So the ability to now segregate the requirements of one team from another's and not impose on them, that's a sea change.
Massive, yeah.
And the fact that we can have it there and demonstrate to our cyber control teams, to our audit teams, that we are in control of the environment and we do know what's going on, usually, And as a consequence, the developer thinks they're free. We know they're controlled. Everybody generally is much happier than they were in the traditional model.
Best of both worlds.
Yes.
Well, thanks for joining us and sharing the
Thanks, Bob.
information.
Thank you.
Ralph has a lot of interesting anecdotes. We got to talk about the deployment, the upgrade process, and this is one of our largest Control M customers. So when you hear him talking about a deployment process that lasted a matter of days versus weeks or months, it's pretty impressive. So thanks again, Ralph. Let's talk about that third challenge that we teed up, which is this data challenge, massive amounts of data. We've got a lot of systems producing data. We've got a lot of tools that create data. We've got new services that create data. And we have an explosion of interest in data science and big data techniques. And we have a speaker who's going to talk to us about machine learning and AI and advanced concepts there. But most of the enterprise customers that we talk to, this is a new challenge. This is something that there's a lot of excitement and energy around, but there's also a lot of challenge around because new teams are being formed. Data scientists are actually very hard to hire. I was told the other day that if you think it's hard to hire an IT security person, try and find a data scientist who knows anything about IT. And so there's a lot of challenges here in this world where data and data analysis equal better service for your customer, equal better choices, better decisions inside your business. So when we talk about service management and this data challenge, one of the biggest challenges is omni-channel. Customers no longer want a desktop experience. It needs to be mobile. It needs to be API. It needs to be whatever, right? It has to be a service. It has to be delivered through any channel that your customer wants. The second one, and I talked about this, is it's not just about building a data lake. That's a really popular thing. Everybody wants to build a data lake. It's actually about insights. How do I translate my data into something actionable so we can make a decision? We got to explore this in our DevOps journey. We began collecting metrics, trying to figure out, well, what matters? What indicates that a release is not going to be high quality? Or what indicates that a team is behind schedule and isn't going to hit their date? And if I had good answers, I'd share those. We're still learning what those right metrics are. But it's been a very fun journey for us as we think about the insights we can get from our data. And then last but not least, self-managed, right? We can't have more staff and more people to manage things, right? The data has to be actionable and the systems have to be accessible. So when we think about how we apply and learn from these patterns, what are the challenges in delivering service management in the age of data? What's the challenge inside IT operations, right? You can see up here, and once again, we're referencing our capability slide, but automation of service desk processes is a super important thing that customers are seeing benefit from. They're seeing reduced handle times. They're seeing lower cost and reduced numbers of tickets. This omni-channel experience, as I said, being able to deliver to the customer when they need it. And maybe most importantly, much like we talked about our choice of cloud, also your choice of AI platform, TensorFlow. There's so many good AI capabilities out there today. This is another thing that we don't want to limit. In the operational world where I come from, one of the big things that big data is being used is for predictive. How can we analyze data from the past and predict an outage and maybe stop it before it occurs? How can we use big data? How can we analyze data so that we can remediate issues and remediate the right issues, right? If I have 100 vulnerable systems and I can only get 10 patches done in my maintenance window, which 10? Which are the most important systems? I'm sure if you asked, each application owner would probably tell you it was his or hers, unless they didn't want to have any downtime, and then they would say that mine's not important, don't patch my system. But again, this idea of self-remediation and fixing issues using data. And then finally, automating big data. So those data lakes, those Hadoop environments, in a lot of cases, there's a ton of manual work to build and curate and move the data into those environments. Why not use a tool like Control M for automation instead of hiring smart people and having them do tedious work? So when BMC looked at this problem and thought about ways to attack it, one of the obvious ones was to come at it from our service management business, the Remedy platform. And at the Chicago version of this very event, I think it was about 6 months ago, we announced Helix. And this is a game changer for service management, something that everybody inside BMC is super excited about. So BMC Helix is cognitive service management. This is modern service management with cognitive built in. And we'll talk about that over the next few slides. And we have a customer who's going to come up and help me talk about it. But really, it's the 3 C's is the tagline that we've come up with. Cloud. First, you can run everything as a service, whether it's Remedy as a service, or whether it's Workflow as a service, or Discovery as a service, Digital Workplace as a service. All of the service management capabilities are available in the cloud, and they're available in the cloud of your choice. Second one is containers, and I just said this, right? Because we've containerized the solution, it gives us a ton of flexibility. It makes the install, the upgrade very, very simple, and it gives you the opportunity to say, I'd like to run this in BMC's cloud, or in Amazon's cloud, or in cloud of my choice. And then the last C is cognitive, right? Transforming traditional IT service management to cognitive service management through embedding cognitive capabilities. So let's talk a little bit about the service management world. I'd like to invite Judy Bennett from the Bank of England to join. Hey, Judy. Yeah, all right. Judy, the Bank of England. Central Bank of England, 300 years old. Tell us a little bit about the bank. Tell us about your role in the bank.
Well, the bank has been around for quite some time, but like any organization these days, IT is essential to everything that it does, and we're on our own digital journey alongside everybody else in the room. And that we run all sorts of different things, from payment systems that are at the center of the UK economy, data systems that actually pull in data and help us to make better decisions, and we need to protect it all from cybersecurity and all those sorts of aspects. And I head up technology, service and operations. I run those things.
Great, great. So one of the key initiatives inside the bank is digital transformation. And when we talked, you talked about a focus on customer excellence and customer service. Talk to us about how you guys came up with this orientation around customer service and customer excellence, and how it impacted your digital journey.
So the customer side of things is really about trying to make technology as seamless for people as you possibly can. Because, you know, we open the fridge, we use the fridge, we don't think about it. We need to get to the point where technology is like that for everybody, and it's easy to use. So when we were implementing our Remedy system earlier this year, we were very much looking at how we could use it to drive further insights into what we needed to do, whether that be looking at the reporting to eliminate some of the issues that people have on a regular basis and making sure we can fix those, or automating things so that we can deliver them faster.
Sure, and you know, I mentioned earlier that automation is critical, especially around service management. Talk to us about when you guys looked at it, how did you pick the processes or the things you wanted to automate first, and give us some insights into that?
Basically, by going back to customer excellence, it's about choosing the ones that are going to make the most difference and doing those first, whether that be where you put them on the screen in terms of people's ease of selecting them, or the things that you automate first to make it easy for people to do things they need to do.
Sure, sure. And so I know that you guys have gone down the path with BMC and gained some efficiencies through the process. Could you talk a little bit about some of those efficiencies?
Yeah, obviously reducing the number of contacts that you get, automating things, that saves you cost in your organization, and then you can reinvest that, whether that be in helping people to get the best out of the products that they've got on their desktop, in increasing their own digital skills, or investing in some of the other core parts of your own business, like the payment systems, cyber, data that I spoke about earlier.
Yeah, and I know you told me you were able to move people to some of the more strategic initiatives.
Absolutely.
You had traditionally been doing maybe some of the grunt work in service
and
management.
That's good for people too, because it develops their careers.
Absolutely. So, you know, having an understanding of your customers and their assets, that's been a pretty critical part of the journey for you.
Yes, so we would have always had the asset information. What we've been able to do with the Discovery tool that we also bought at the same time as Remedy is make better use of that. So it's not now on spreadsheets, it's automated, it's got all the feeds in that we need. And that helps us to give better service to people. So all the people who have this model of computer on their desk, I now can find that out a lot more easily. And it also helps us with compliance and risk management, software licensing, all of those sorts of things, which are very important.
They are, and they're often overlooked because people think of service management as a ticketing system or a service desk, and they don't think about inventory and asset and config and security and all the ways that it extends into the rest of IT.
Absolutely.
What would you had a previous service desk, and you went through a journey of identifying and selecting a vendor and then moving through this. What could you tell the audience about that process? Any tips and tricks that you'd give them?
The two things that I remember most of all are always keeping a focus on the outcome that you wanted, the business outcomes and the customer outcomes that you wanted from the process. And also perhaps thinking also about the data migration journey. So if you're moving data from one system to another, which data are you going to keep? How are you going to do all the mapping? All of those sorts of things. And I guess the final one is just remembering that there's not just a technology change, but a cultural change. If you're transforming digital skills of your organization, you need to bring people along on the journey with you.
Yeah, I talked about that in DevOps and kind of experiencing that firsthand, trying to roll out new systems and train teams. One of the big trends that we read a lot about is chatbots, digital assistants. Is that something that's on the near term for the bank, or maybe a little further out in the future?
It's something that we're actively talking to our account team about at the moment, whether that will be something that we use to increase our own efficiency or something that we use to help people out in the hands of the customer in order to increase their own digital skills. It's something that we're particularly interested in.
Great. What's next for the bank? Where are you guys going next on this journey?
So we've talked a little bit about the chatbot side of things. The other side is making more use of the discovery tool that we implemented. There's a lot more that we can do with that, especially in terms of service mapping and using all the configuration data to help us with both incidents and changes that we want to make to our systems.
Great. Well, Judy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. We've just heard now from Bank of England and how they've enabled a digital transformation themselves around service management for both internal use and their customers. Let's jump to the fourth and final challenge, opportunity of the day, and it's security. And this is one that I talked a little bit about previously, and Judy mentioned it, and I think Ralph even mentioned it. More and more, security is becoming woven into the fabric of IT operations. Customers are recognizing that it is very challenging to manage the public cloud breaches, to hire cybersecurity talent, to handle the increasing load of vulnerabilities that exist, and to continue with what is largely a reactive approach. In most organizations, I've got the benefit of talking to lots of enterprise customers over the last couple of decades. Just like dev and ops were siloed, separate, and fighting more often than collaborating, security and ops have been in that same mindset, where security points the finger over at the operations guys and says, these guys aren't doing their job. And the operations guys say, the security guys just give us a million things every single day we've got to go do. We can't keep up. So security is important. It's not just important because we've got to fix that cultural problem that I just described, from reactive to proactive and getting the right skill sets. But it's also really important because of what we talked about at the beginning: multi-cloud, new services, new applications, teams going faster, releasing more software. All of these things, to a security practitioner's mind, are scary because these are ways that you introduce risk into an environment. So let's talk a little bit about cloud security and the security imperative. So when we look at security, obviously one of the first things that everyone we talk to mentions is visibility. I don't have a single view of all my systems and all my configurations, and I don't have access to those cool threat intelligence systems that the security guys have. Or, right, it's the same problem that we've seen in the past. Functional silos with tools designed to give them visibility into one thing, but not designed to give them visibility across. Second one is being able to accelerate your responses. Every single customer we talk to complains about IT operations responsiveness. We found 1,000 vulnerable systems in our last vulnerability scan, and we gave that list to IT, and they fixed 12. And so then we ran the new scan, and guess what? We found 5,000 new vulnerabilities on top of the 988 that they didn't fix. And so there's a mountain of vulnerabilities out there that teams are struggling to understand. Teams are struggling to just figure out, where does it exist? Is this the same vulnerability as this vulnerability, or is this a whole new vulnerability that I've got to look at? And managing that risk. If I have 1,000 vulnerable systems, which one's most important to fix? That's a hard question. Very difficult. Which 10 should I fix first, or which 15? Should I do it by operating system? Because I can have my Windows team patch the Windows boxes and my Linux guys or my Solarix guys do this. Or should I do it by business service? Because that way I take a business service down for a short period of time and I reconfigure and fix all of its security issues. This is a challenging space, right? The combination of identifying risk and having visibility in, and having an ability to take action quickly. So let's talk about BMC's approach and the key capabilities that we come up with as it relates to security. And again, familiar slide, and you'll see some of the same bullets. Discovery, not surprising. But discovery, not only a valuable tool for visibility into assets and inventory in an IT operations world, but incredibly valuable about identifying blind spots in your environment. An example of this, we had a large customer who was very, very proud of the fact that when Heartbleed, which was a vulnerability that came out not too many months back, when it came out, they were up to date and they had patched all of the systems that could have been impacted by Heartbleed. And so while the rest of the world was freaking out, trying to figure out what they needed to do, these guys were comfortable, they were calm, they knew that they had patched everything, except for those systems they didn't know about. So what happened was they had scanned their environment for vulnerabilities. They had found these Windows boxes that had the old version of Microsoft and that they needed to patch, and they went ahead and patched them. But what they didn't recognize is their vulnerability scanner was not scanning their entire environment. The security guys didn't want to pay to scan the labs, didn't want to pay to scan all those development boxes. And so while they thought they actually were covered, they were blind. They were blind to hundreds of systems, and not surprisingly, most of those systems did get infected with Heartbleed, and they had to go remediate them. So this idea of visibility and using discovery everywhere for blind spot identification is huge. And then, of course, you want to tie that into closed-loop change management. You want to be able to have a tracking mechanism to say, hey, we found 53 things last Thursday, and we assigned them to IT operations to fix. Have we fixed any of them? What's the status of those systems? So really powerful capabilities up there in the top right around service. Operate. Let's move there. Proactive monitoring. One of the things all of our customers complain about is that security in general tends to be reactive, and it tends to be firefighting, and it tends to be these really scary issues that everybody has to come in and work for 24 hours or 48 hours on. How can we be proactive? How can we monitor in advance, check things in advance, use machine learning and analytics to identify risk areas, and then go plug those holes, fix those risks? And same thing for compliance. It's not just about vulnerabilities or threats, right? Compliance is so important, because those who don't understand the linkage, typically compliance is about how you set things up, how you configured it. And we're going to give you a great example in a second of how easy it is to make a massive mistake in a cloud environment and give away all your company's data. And so compliance with company policies is also important, and it's an often overlooked part of this equation. And then the last thing, obviously, automation. So if you are trying to automate security remediation, one of the first things that you have to do is have a common process and approach, because typically the security team, as I said, is different from the ops team. And then you want to do patching. You want to do remediation in an intelligent way. Which systems first? Which systems have maintenance windows? Can I take those systems offline and patch them quickly and get them back before the business will be impacted? Or do I have to have an outage in order to address this security issue? So a lot of intelligence built into patching and security remediation there. So one of the products that I want to highlight is TrueSight Cloud Security. And the reason I want to bring this up is this is new innovation. So we've had 3 customers come up, and we've had them talk to you about products that are extremely powerful, where there's been a ton of innovation. Helix on the remedy side, my portfolio with TrueSight, and we heard all about the great innovation in Gore's portfolio around Control-M. But BMC isn't just innovating on our classic products. We are also innovating, and we have new capabilities. And so TrueSight Cloud Security is one of those new products. This is a cloud service. It's delivered as a subscription service, and it's designed to manage configs and cloud resources in a consistent way and give you an audit trail, and if you want, remediate issues. So with that, I'd like to invite Allison Kramer up to the stage to join me to talk about TrueSight Cloud Security.
Thank you.
Thanks, Allison.
I did not anticipate the catwalk, but that was nice. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a view into what TrueSight Cloud Security does, and then we'll bring up the demo. We have Desmond Sanders over here who's going to go through it with us. Good news is that if you would like to see more, once you're ready, when you go out into the lobby, he and others will be out there to take you through it. So as organizations go into the cloud, one of the biggest areas of failure is security and compliance. We have another session later today that talks about cloud migration and management capabilities, and that is one of the #1 reasons for failure. Now, part of that is because of, and we've talked about it all day, we've talked about speed, we've talked about offering different choices. The operations side of me, when I hear that, it just sounds like chaos, right? And you can't manage what you can't measure. You can't manage what you can't find. You can't look at all those different things. There's a very common phrase from Peter Drucker. He says, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So as part of that, we can bring up the demo now. What this product is trying to do is to give you a scalable way to allow for that speed, to allow people to use the environments that they want to use and to be able to move forward. So as you look at this, we're going to walk through the dashboard, and I'm just going to orient you to what you see, how we go through, and then how you might go through a use case. The first big number you see, 2,317. So that's the total number of resources, cloud resources that I have that are connected to my credentials. So if you click on the All Connectors dropdown, this will give you an idea of some of the things that's picking up. It'll pick up my Amazon instances, it'll look for Docker containers, it'll look for Google Cloud. Now, the different teams that I support may make different choices, right? Some want Azure, some want Google, some want AWS. I can allow that choice because this tool allows me to keep track of my entire estate in one place. Now, moving across, you'll start to see I get to look at my health, right? I have 1,070 non-compliant issues. I have 1,200 that are, and then I have 0%. Good news there is in the indeterminate. Indeterminate is an area of investigation, something that either it couldn't find the policy, it couldn't find the resource. I also get a nice look at some trending over time. So how am I looking? Do I have, this can give you a chance, we've talked about the data and applying the data and learning from it. This will give you a chance to see, okay, do I have bursts of places where suddenly I'm all out of compliance? Or do I have different activities that have caused different sets of problems for me in that trail? That'll give you that piece. We're going to scroll down now and go through by severity. So if you see I have 12 critical flaws. Now I can look in there and just dig in and focus on that piece. I can get an idea of my picture. So now I'm going to give you a little bit more of a story so we can walk through the use case. So come into work one day, I see that Elasticsearch has a known configuration or vulnerability. So I want to look and see, okay, across my ES domains, where am I exposed? So we would do the sort, we'd find ES, and then my dashboard will repopulate, and it'll tell me exactly where I am for that particular set of issues. Now, under the 5, I have 5 critical violations. So if we can click on those, then we can see where my critical violations are. We'll select one. This is one that's exposing my customer data to the outside world. That's bad. When you look at that green to red timeline up top, this also gives me a view of where, at what point did I go non-compliant. So some things go into compliance, come back out, maybe somebody goes back in and changes it on me, can kind of keep track of these different things. Now, if I want to remediate this, I click on the left box, I click remediate violations. We're not going to do it now, but oh, yes, we are. There we are. So you get the nice green box that shows you that you successfully remediated it. Now when I go back to the dashboard, that one will be gone. So one of the things that's nice to me about this is that it's not just a dashboard. It's not just another way to sort your problems and have pretty pictures and charts. You can actually go in here and update it. I think you have to rerun it. in order for it to come back. So as you go through this, this will give you those guardrails. It gives you that opportunity to be able to enable that choice, to effectively manage your risk, and accelerate how quickly you can respond. You can also set this up. Now, we did it with the human intervention piece where we go in and we chose and we decided what we were going to do so we could do it when we wanted to. You could set it up to do it automatically as well. That's at your discretion, right? So you have that ability to set that up. But that is cloud security. Again, we would be happy to show it to you out there. We do have a 14-day trial, so if you're interested in the trial, we'd be happy to set that up for you. It's a pretty quick and easy process. And thank you for your time.
Great, thanks,
Thanks.
Allison. So I'm sure some of the people from my team are watching, or maybe even here in the room, and it would be bad if I didn't say this. So we use that tool internally. We do about 6,300 checks, specific policies that we check every single time we run our release pipeline. All policies are automated. All remediations are automated. Again, we trust the tool because we built the tool. I know a lot of our customers don't turn auto remediation on day one. They turn notify on, and then they kind of click remediation until they get comfortable. But a powerful solution that ties security and DevOps together. Really excited about it. Thanks, Allison. So let's wrap up. We've heard from 3 customers and a BMC marketer about the way that BMC is helping customers, our open, our scalable, our modular approach to multi-cloud. We talked about run and reinvent. We talked about the challenge that we all have. You know, I have a joke that's a little politically incorrect, but I'll say it anyways. They say God couldn't have created the world in 7 days if he had a customer base. Dun-dun-dun. The point is, we're all living run and reinvent. We all have a set of customers, a set of legacy environments or hybrid environments, as Ralph described it, that we're responsible for. And we're not going to be able to get away from those. But at the same time, we've got to reinvent. We've got to innovate because the stakes are high these days. So this slide kind of summarizes what we talked about, the 4 challenges on the outside in the orange circles: DevOps, security, data, and cloud. The 3 critical areas of capabilities that BMC brings, and then you can see we mapped it out across the bottom into some of those big challenge areas, those big capability areas in the domains. So I'll leave you with an interesting thought, and it's something you guys have probably heard before, and that is that 50% of the companies in the S&P 500 will be replaced over the next 10 years. I can say this with a lot of confidence because I think it was just a few years ago I presented a slide that said 10 years previously, 50% of the companies in the S&P 500 got replaced, and could name some of the names. This is happening. There's so many examples of this. We all know. And at BMC, we see it as our mission to support you all in disrupting your industries. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time this morning. I'd like to let you know that we're going to take a short 20-minute break. Coffee will be available out back. Thank you.
Good morning. How are we doing? Okay, I hope you've really enjoyed the morning session so far. It's been really fantastic. It's great to see such a great audience here today. Thank you again for coming and taking a day out to be with us. This is the awards part of our agenda this morning. So before we just get into that, just a few comments. So since its inception several years ago, BMC Exchange, this event, has always been about the customer community, customer success. Right at the core, right in the essence of this event is you, the customer. And it's no different today. You've heard from a few customers already this morning, some really powerful stories from the 3 customers that we had on stage already. I think you'll agree. So it's my privilege this morning to formally recognize a small subset of our customer community for their achievements in terms of innovation, in terms of thought leadership, in terms of how they've pushed the boundaries, using our products, using our technology to deliver value back into their organizations. Obviously, it would be great to hear everyone's story this morning. There will be a large number of untold stories from you today. Unfortunately, we can't have everyone on stage. But we do want to recognize these three customers in particular for what they've achieved, particularly over the last 12 months. Okay. So without further ado, I want to go to our first category, which is the category of digital business automation, and recognize an organization which is a well-known company, a Fortune 500 financial services organization who is well known to most. In fact, from a UK perspective, we probably know them best for the credit card services they deliver. In fact, a number of you may well have the credit card in your possession today. This organization has been a long-standing customer of BMC. They've used our Control M solution for many years. They've used it in the traditional sense from an on-premise point of view, automating processes and batch runs. But more recently have transitioned the use of Control M into the cloud. And they are now hosting it and running it from Amazon Web Services, AWS, and are doing that very successfully. That not only allows them greater flexibility in terms of how they run and manage Control M, but it also allows them to support a cloud-first strategy where they intend and they plan to move all workloads and all applications and services into the cloud over the next 3 years. An incredible plan and an incredible strategy. On top of that, they have worked really closely with our developer team and have helped us with some of the capabilities that you heard about earlier from Ralph Ellis at JPMC, the automation API capability into Control M. Thank you, Ralph, for the explanation you gave of what you're doing there with that set of capabilities. So this particular organization we're about to give an award to helped us with the development of that capability, and we're one of the early adopters of that capability. And just as you heard with Ralph, it's helping this organization as well to align to their DevOps strategy and to release applications more quickly in a more agile way, but with control as well. So without any further ado, please give a big hand to Paul Griffiths from Capital One. Thank you. Hey, Paul. Congratulations. Congratulations. Release this over to you. Got it? Don't drop it. Okay, we're going to get closer. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. Cheers. Got the clicker out of my pocket here. Okay. The next category we want to recognize is digital service management, and I want to talk to you very briefly about a customer who, again, is a well-known organization, well-known company here in the UK, probably best known for bringing us daily publications like The Sun, The Times, The Sunday Times in the traditional newspaper format, but also in the many digital formats that we have today. As part of the digital transformation this organization has been going through, they have also been transforming how they deliver IT within their organization. And that has included some incredible effort around aligning to a global shared services strategy. As part of that, they have migrated from Remedyforce, which is a BMC solution, to BMC Helix, which you heard about this morning in David Kramer's presentation. In making that change to BMC Helix, it's enabled them to deliver new capabilities around digital workplace, delivering better end-user services to the end-user community, and ultimately delivering higher customer satisfaction within this organization. And on top of that, it's allowed them to underpin key strategies around mobility and delivering a truly smart office to an ever-challenging, ever-mobile workforce. Please join me in applauding the recipient of this award, Joanne from News UK. Joanne McQueen. Hey, Joanne, congratulations. I'm going to hand this over to you. There we go. It's heavy, isn't it? Okay, just hold it.
Okay, thanks a lot. I need a third hand up here. Hold this clicker. Okay, our final category is digital service operations. And I'm delighted to talk about this organization. It's, again, a well-known company, a multinational represented in something like 180 countries around the world, a well-known telecommunications and service provider. They provide most of the fixed line and mobile and broadband services in the UK, including TV subscription and including various IT managed services. This organization and the division that's represented here today has been on a very significant transformation around improving customer experience for 3,000 of their customers, a truly incredible challenge. And in doing that, they have conducted a very extensive tools transformation in terms of how they deliver those services. As part of that transformation, they've underpinned their strategy with BMC solutions from this particular category, and ultimately are delivering an end-to-end predictive cognitive service operations platform to improve the end-user experience of those 3,000 customers. Please join me for this final award in applauding Rhys Malt from BT Enterprise. Great, thank you. Congratulations. Okay, thank you. Just stay on stage. Okay, I've just asked Rhys to stay on stage because we're going to bring the other two award winners back up, please. And I'd also like to ask Peter Leave, our CEO and President, to come back onto the stage, and we're going to do a group photograph. So if everyone can come back on stage, that would be great. Peter. Turn a bit. Okay, we need to move. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, congratulations to all three organizations represented. Okay, so I'd like to welcome now our guest speaker, mentioned earlier by Rhys and given the introduction by Rhys earlier on this morning, Dr. Lyle Unger, who serves as a professor in the University of Pennsylvania, but in addition to that, consults with a number of Fortune 500 companies. He's here today. We're very excited about what he has to say. He's going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence and deep learning and about how that is changing our industry probably forever. So please welcome to the stage Dr. Unger.
Good morning, great to be in London, wonderful city. So I noticed about a decade ago, a technological revolution swept through the companies I work most with, Google, Facebook, Amazon. And about 3-4 years ago, I was starting to see these same changes coming to companies like yours, large companies. I wanted to take just a little time to give you a quick background of what AI and machine learning are and have been, and then to open up some discussion about what they will be and how they're changing places. One thing that if you look back, there are an increasing number of cases where artificial intelligence, and the hype is phenomenal, but the reality is there too, is doing superhuman performance. World's best chess players, way back in the 90s. IBM Watson, now a major brand coming near to you, playing Jeopardy at world class. Things you may know less about, Google has a bunch of trucks that go around taking pictures of street addresses. Can you recognize whether that's a 30 or a 27 or a 232? If you look back at 2011, before the deep learning revolution, 9% wrong, 2.5% wrong, humans at 2%. And starting 2015, not that long ago, the best computers are doing slightly superhuman performance on recognizing, is that a 65 or a 66? Playing Go, of course. Ones you may not have seen, a colleague I work with at Stanford University went to a dating website, took men seeking men and men seeking women, call the men looking for men gay, call the women looking for women straight, take their photographs they published, and trained up a deep learning system to recognize, is this guy looking for a guy or a woman? Performance, slightly better than humans. Ooh, first of all, not that good. We're talking something in the 70-75% accurate compared to random guessing. He spent a lot of time talking to the people about how to deal with the death threats he was getting. Security people might appreciate. His view is the American government, the Chinese government, whichever government you care about or don't, they can do this. This is now a homework assignment I have my students do at a graduate level course. It's not that hard. Little frightening. Lots of information there. On a more benign note, Microsoft and Baidu both claim to have the world's best English to Chinese translator. Microsoft takes in, you can read the Chinese, actually I can't, but okay. Takes in Chinese, puts out English translations on Newswire, which is fairly clean, slightly better than professional translators. So you see dozens of these examples where tasks are being automated really well. Now, one question you might ask is, what do these have in common? All of them are fairly narrow, focused problems. They're not telling general stories. They're not doing sales events. They're not giving talks. They're solving specific problems with lots of data. But more and more, we have lots of such tasks with lots of data. So, what is artificial intelligence? I want to give you very briefly a quick picture of how it works, why it's hard. Lots of things one thinks should get automated won't be automated quite so soon, and talk about impact on jobs and people. So there are really basically three ways that people build these systems. One is writing down rules. If you see this, do that. Business logic, that's sort of the core of the IBM Watson system. Nice, but pretty expensive and slow to do these things, often more expensive than IBM hopes it would be. One is optimization. We'll not talk much about that. That's sort of nice. And the big one is finding patterns, learning from statistical patterns that show up in data. And this works in many ways stunningly well. Big data, you have no doubt heard, the hype is everywhere, a key basis of competition, new waves of productivity, right? Everything wonderful. Even more exciting to me, Harvard Business Review called data scientist the sexiest job of the 21st century. That's the only time anyone ever calls me sexy. But thank you, Harvard Business Review. These started at big companies that you've heard of, and equally ones that we don't talk about quite so much in the West, with our counterparts in China. Now there's a huge back-end infrastructure of smaller companies providing these sort of services and analyses doing well. Behind almost all this is something incredibly simply stupid. In comes some sort of a vector description of something, a cat image, a dog image. Out comes a label, cat or dog. In between, a bunch of statistics done quite automated fashion now. And again, I want to stress the stupidity of this. All it's doing is taking in a cat image or a dog image or a person image or an avocado image, running it through a 10 million parameter model, estimating the parameters, building a statistical model. That sounds sort of like, this is the revolution? My students and I say, where's the intelligence? I don't know where the intelligence is, but it works surprisingly well. You can take in an image, it goes through a whole bunch of different layers of transformation, and out comes a prediction, but it's all just prediction. So what do you see? Image, who's in it, what's in it, Facebook recognizes your face surprisingly well. If you talk to your phone, in goes the sound, out comes a string of characters. Yeah, more or less what you meant to say. Places like Google and Facebook are fundamentally, of course, advertising companies. In comes the web page you're browsing and your history and an awful lot of stuff they know about you. Every single of the 43,000 searches I've made, Google has queried up. Everything I've told my phone it knows. All of that goes into a big statistical algorithm and predicts which ads I will click on. In comes an image, and out comes a label of is it cancerous or not, preferably with 500,000 training examples collected across lots of hospitals. Self-driving cars, some logic, some business rules, some optimization, but a lot of training to learn that's a car, that's a bicycle, that's a piece there. And somewhat astoundingly to me, 3 or 4 years ago, companies like Google had a bunch of computational linguists learning the rules behind grammar and language. Now they take in, here's an English sentence, here's an Arabic sentence, given only a 250,000 such pairs of sentences, there is some equation that maps any possible English sentence to, well, whichever language you want, Chinese, Arabic. It's just statistics. Trying to write down the rules of English, linguists have spent years doing that. English is really complicated. I'm really pleased it's my first language because I'd hate to learn it, but all languages are incredibly complicated, but there are statistical patterns, and it's not hard to get a hold of a few 100 million sentences of English. I have billions and billions of them on my computer, and learn these statistical patterns. So translation, which used to be something that required intelligence, now works fairly well with artificial intelligence. Classic breakthrough ones was looking at images. Here's an image labeled with a mite. And current systems look at thousands of different categories. Container ships or motor scooters or leopards. They mostly work stunningly well, trained on lots and lots of labeled databases of images. Sometimes they make weird mistakes. This one thinks that it's probably a cell phone, when in fact the guy's holding up not a cell phone, but a tape player. And I think, and it's also happily at least recognizes it's not very sure about it. What I like about this mistake is it sort of helps me understand why these statistical methods fail, which is to say it's trained on lots of data taken from the current web. There are millions of people holding up cell phones. There's not a lot of people on the current web holding up boom boxes. And it tends to recognize really well things that there are a lot of, faces and cats. For some reason, the web is full of cats. I don't understand this. But if you train up a deep learning system to recognize images, that's what they're good at, faces and cats. That's what it's full of. They're not super good at recognizing exceptions, except at least to note that, oh, that is an exception. This doesn't quite look like anything I've seen before. So again, the stupidity of recognizing frequent patterns, failing when things are not frequent. One of the big trends, I'm sure you all thought about working on, some people are doing, dialogue systems, chatbots. These two are starting to be approached by deep learning, by machine learning. In goes a question, out goes an answer. Think of Siri, think of Google Now. These systems have a speech recognition on the front end to talk to it, and lots of back-end data. Databases looks behind Apple Siri. Lots of information about movies, locations, things that are happening, what's in the press. And lots of expertise to understand language. Language is frighteningly difficult. You say, why don't these nice chatbots just work beautifully? And you got to think of what is it like to be a computer. So again, picture yourself really stupid. You hear a sequence of sounds, and you're trying to recognize them. It starts with book, 4-star, rest star, aunt, in the band, Boston. Right, so what happens what goes in as you speak to your phone, whether you're an Android or an Apple user, is it's hearing a bunch of sounds trying to figure out what you meant to say. And it's really obvious in your head you meant book a 4-star restaurant in Boston. But in fact, every word in English or Chinese or your favorite language, really ambiguous. I looked up Boston. Here are a few Bostons on Wikipedia. I thought there was only one Boston, Massachusetts, but no. Lots of Bostons out there. You look for 4-star restaurants. Turns out there is a Star City, Russia. In Philadelphia, where I come from, there is actually a whole star restaurant chain. And in fact, even on Yelp, you can find a 4-star restaurant. Oddly enough, it's in Kaukauna, Wisconsin. Probably not the one I wanted to book, but that is the 4-star restaurant. As far as I know, it's the only 4-star restaurant in the world, but it's not in Boston. Everything that is said to your computer, and think about your chatbots, you will not imagine how many different ways people are able to type and text you, why is the system down? Busted, kaput, not responding. Lots of different ways to say the same thing. If you've got a big enough database from your call center, your contact center, then statistically, these systems can learn the right processes. Trying to write down by hand every possible question someone could ask you turns out to be really expensive. So part of this revolution is having these data of these are all the questions I've gotten, these are the answers, and then tying that back automatically to your rather large database of facts about the world. So, final segment, what's going to happen to jobs? It's sort of frightening maybe that these systems can recognize if you're gay or straight. It's sort of cool that they can translate English to Chinese increasingly reasonably well. But what happens to unemployment? Is this going to be awesome if your company's being super profitable? You can fire all your workers and, I don't know, sit on the beach or not. The predictions are all over the map. I think the more common ones are roughly 10 to 14% of jobs being lost, which in some sense is not that radical because there's been more change than that in the last 10 years. Some jobs probably will go away. If I were running low-end contact centers in India, I'd be really worried about being automated. Lots of those processes are being replaced by chatbots. I can certainly see in the next decade lots of truck driving jobs going away. Already, you go to the supermarket and they say, please scan your, it's here in England. The US, you must have the same thing. You scan your own stuff as you go out. There's a fourth as many cashiers. Lots of little AI. Where's the AI? Each time you put the item you bought onto the little bag, it weighs it, checks it against the database to see whether you're actually shoplifting something. Did the item weigh the right amount? So there's lots of little checking for fraud happening to make sure that you're being honest while it's being automated. So there's invisible AI on lots of these self-scanning systems. But most jobs are not going to be put out of business. The reality is that the job rate is not being affected so far by huge amounts of automation. We've had a decade of major automation. Unemployment's really low. Mostly what's happening, tasks are being automated, not jobs. Perhaps the poster child for this is looking at ATMs. If you look from 1970 to 2010 in the US, ATMs, these automated teller machines, came into use. And you ask, what happened to bank tellers? These men and women who actually handle cash, that expensive process that banks would like not to do. And what happened is over the same period the ATMs were massively coming in, bank teller went up slightly. What happened? Partly deregulation in the US, partly lower cost. It was easier to open more different locations. The economic forces that drove the banking industry were much bigger than the automation forces putting people out of business. Now, if you look from 2010 to now, the number of bank tellers in the US is down from 600,000 maybe to 500,000. So, in fact, finally, millennials are, in fact, getting rid of collecting money and handing stuff. But it's still the case that this automation took decades and only had tiny impacts on employment. So I think it's very hard to predict, will automating this task change unemployment? Will we get rid of people? I think in general, particularly if you think about call centers and help centers, the fact you will automate large amounts of the low-end service center requests to your company is not necessarily going to help you fire people or replace them, make them redundant. There will be lots more other communications, and increasingly, what do you do with your bank tellers in this case? Have them sell additional products, help them do something that's a higher-end task. So speaking of higher-end tasks, what is this AI revolution, often branded these days as cognitive technology, right? That's the applied side of AI, machine learning. Of course, it came out of sales companies, marketing companies. That's made by Facebook and Google, right? They sell you stuff in a very targeted fashion. Then came through the back end of companies like Amazon for process supply chain management. Increasingly failure prediction analysis, first actually not in computer industry, but in you run a big rock crushing or a turbine engine, you're Boeing, you sell these large engines, they go, when the sound starts going, then you worry and say, hey, order a new replacement part, the thing's about to fail. So looking at detecting automation failures before they happen, that's obviously moving into the computer industry. And of course, help desks and document analysis. Help desks, how many people are looking at some sort of a chatbot system? Yeah, moderate numbers, okay. My prediction, I don't make predictions about the future very often. In the next 5 years, you're all going to be looking and thinking about chatbots, about how to help service centers, about what these calls are that are being done. Nobody wants to go and look at some FAQ page you have on the web that describes stuff. They don't even want to pick up the phone and call you. They want to text in and say, hey, why is this not working the way I thought it was? And you can pay someone to text them back again, but it's going to be a lot cheaper and more efficient to have the computer do it. Increasingly, any sort of minor update. You're maintaining HR records and someone wants to change their address. Why is a human harmed in updating your address? This is something they can text in the change, verify it's you, security thing, make the changes. Lots of minor, straightforward, repetitive tasks are going to get automated soon. Lots of companies are doing this now. Lots of troubleshooting, checking to see what's going on, why has it broken, tell me the right person at the right time, what's going there. Claim processing. Lots of information. We've heard examples earlier today, but one I think of is you're in a minor accident. You can now download an app, take an image of the photo, fill in the pieces, text in all the information to your insurance company. They then run it through a checker and either approve it or note certain discrepancies. Now, surprisingly often, it happens that there are, for example, Ford Motor Company does this, warranty claims. They have both structured data, what the claim is, and unstructured text. For years, they've had computers that check the text descriptions to see if it's consistent with the other claims. If it is, awesome, approved. If not, they don't declare fraud. Someone just comes to visit you, gives you a call. Similarly, lots of doctor's offices put in claims. If the doctor's office is doing a higher than expected statistical number of rather more expensive procedures in a given category, computer flags it and says, hey, we'd like to go chat with you just a little bit. I'm sure it's a more expensive base you have of different, more sick people, but we'll just investigate it. So again, notice this automated, not replacing investigators, but the first line of who's going to check through all these statistical records of all the procedures in this warranty to make sure that it's actually plausibly consistent with what we normally see for this sort of place. Legal, lots of legal research. Law firms process insane numbers of documents. There are now nice systems to help try and pull those together. Non-disclosure agreements. I've signed a lot of NDAs. There are plenty of companies now that have thousands of examples of NDAs that have signed or been rejected. Computer systems then statistically look at those and say, this NDA, it has a clause I haven't seen before. Bump that up to our lawyers to look at it. Commercial agreements you heard this morning. Any sort of these loan agreements, retail agreements, you're leasing a property, pages of boring lawyerly language where you want to check through to see that it all has the right things and none of the wrong things. Lots of automation, financial disclosure, read through what have we submitted to the UK or the US governments. You have to submit lots of disclosure forms. Companies are now auditing these as a first pass. Not 100% automation, right? Reading the first piece, looking at it. You might think again that this would mean that all of these lawyers and paralegals would be out of business. Legal research has been vastly automated. So far, no drop in the number of paralegals. There are still lots of people collecting more documents, processing, just doing order of magnitude more documents pass through the process, rather than actually saying, great, we've gotten rid of this problem. So annoyingly, many of these automated systems just make it cheaper to check more documents, but maybe that's good. Text editing. A fun example I like, there's a company called Text.io, has systems where they collect advertisements that have been shown and who responds to those advertisements. Lots of companies would like to get more minorities. You are well-intentioned. You put an ad that we highly value diversity, which sounds good. And then if you check statistically, like these guys do, to say, did that lead to more blacks or fewer blacks, you get, oh, fewer blacks applied. That sounded like a good thing to say. It sounds good to me. Turns out that's sort of old-fashioned. You should have said, we're an inclusive company. The phrasing was awkward. Sounds sort of out of date, sounds formulaic. Lots of things sound nice. Exceptional programmers sought, successful candidates will thrive in our fast-paced environment. Awesome. What I can tell you based on Text.io's statistics is that statistically, fast-paced environment attracts more men, fewer women. You could instead say energizing environment or exciting environment. Statistically, and this is very typical of these systems, right? This is not fully automated. What it does is just for each ad you want to submit, run it through here. We'll check to see who's responding. Some things just turn off everybody. You might want to phrase those differently. Some will turn off specific other groups. We seek clients with high grade point average. Great. No one in their 40s or 50s will apply. You've successfully discriminated against them, right? How many of you guys think, oh, I got a great GPA, right? So this sort of automation is permeating lots of little tasks, not replacing someone placing job ads, but helping make the quality much better. Text generation. Lots of data sits in databases of some course. They're really cool software packages now that take the statistics from your local high school football game and generate automatically a news story. These are of a par with those written by low-end professional writers, which is to say crappy but good enough to do it. Chain stores. If you have 1,000 different stores in your chain, each month you want a customized one-page summary for each store manager. Here's how you did. Here's how it compares against your last month's performance. Here's how it compares against comparable stories. So converting a bunch of numbers, sales numbers, into a story in an automated procedure and customized in the sense, it's all automated, customized in the sense that each story for each of the 1,000 chains is different. It's the relevant things or the metrics about their store that they should be worried about. Financial summaries, reading out lots again of numbers from your P&L, pulling that into a relevant story. So lots of these automated systems where there is high volume, lots of data, big historical record of people who used to, by hand, write out, here's what I should tell each manager, giving these automated stories together. Data centers, of course. I feel silly telling this crowd, right? But lots of automated server and software configuration, running updates, lots of rule-based systems there, and increasingly large amounts of predictive analytics. Statistically, what I'm seeing based on this data flow here is that this piece may be failing in the next week or so. You might want to make sure, whatever, backed up, orders are in place to do things, or bottleneck identification. So what do we see across all of this as sort of a takeaway piece? Routine tasks, things that happen over and over and over and over, are being automated, and typically automated at superhuman performance. Again, you heard before about the reviewing of the documents for the financial documents. Fewer errors than human. Humans tend to get tired and distracted, and if you can have something automated, mostly it's better quality. If you have lots of data where you can say, look it, here's my call center, the last 37,000 times I got the question, 36,000 times we gave this answer, oh, and the other 1,000 times we're wrong, we can actually automate it. If you have to sit down and write down the rules, in this case do that, in this case do that, you get a pretty good 80-20. You get the common things fairly well, or there's a big tail of stuff that's remarkably hard. You never thought of how many different things people do. So I think there's a lot of automation coming there. The other piece that I think is maybe less obvious is what is data. And certainly if you look at the examples I go of Google, Google knows where I am from my phone. It knows my entire search history. It knows everything I clicked on or not clicked on. But increasingly, companies know lots more behind that. You have security cameras out in the parking lot which know how many people are coming in or out. Increasing companies know, sort of creepily, where are you walking around from the geolocation from your phone. If I'm texting in a question from my call center, where is it coming from? That's information. Where have I been recently? That's information. What was displayed on the computer screen I was looking at? That's information. How did I respond to the last 5 questions that I gave you? That's information. So what's happened is in the old days, if you had to write down business rules, really hard to incorporate in all this sort of fuzzy information. Is it raining outside? How many people are missing from work today? All these things may have some tiny statistical effect. Can the rain affect your data center? Hopefully not, but sometimes yes. Yeah, we do sometimes. So all this stuff becomes data. It all gets folded in. What used to be more computing has more and more edge. Phones are part of your computer network system. Those cameras around are part of it. Companies using click patterns. You all have a hand as you type, or type. You can recognize people not by their password, but by the timing of the keystrokes as they enter the password. If somebody else knows your password, types it in, the chance of them duplicating your keystroke pattern, really small. So all this stuff that you might not have thought of data becomes data. You all now get to manage it and get to feed it into these deep learning models to try and do predictively useful things from that. Along with this is a shift in software. Amazingly, companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon are giving away for free for you to use their core software. Now, what does that mean about Google's thought about the utility of deep learning? They will give you all their software for free. Where's the value? The data. They're not going to share your data for free. They're not going to share it, period, quite apart from GDPR. That's the value. If you look at a Google ad versus a Microsoft ad, there's a search engine called Bing. Some of you heard of it? Google makes almost twice as much per ad as Microsoft does, not because their software is better. Microsoft has awesomely good software. Google has much more people visiting their site, a much deeper base of advertisers. They have more data upon which to run their statistics. So increasingly, owning and controlling the data is the value, and the software, who cares? It's there. It's nice. Also, behind this, all these deep learning systems, in the old days, they ran on CPUs, really slow and expensive. My favorite study out of Google, I estimated the cost was the energy, which is a big cost, of course, enough energy to power San Francisco for a month for one big Google study. Now I can afford to run those on GPUs in my rather small cluster. Finally, the cloud, of course, is changing the game. We all know that. But increasingly, you want to try and play with these softwares. You can spin up an AWS instance or a Google instance with the GPUs attached, everything set up, all this semi-specialized hardware and very specialized software all pre-installed. Much easier to play with these things, test them up. So, takeaways. Data science, machine learning, obviously big, but richer information, lots more data that include not just the information of the keystroke, but when it happened, who did it, where, and the context. And again, data, of course, are text, images, videos, everything. Lots of automation of routine tasks coming. The cognitive computing revolution is, in fact, upon us. And I think the biggest change you'll see in the short run, lots of chatbots, that it will be expected, and you guys, I guess, are mostly old, but millennials expect that the way they communicate is texting and getting an answer now, and your employees and your customers' customers will expect you to respond to their text now. You will never afford it unless you move to automate these things. And these sort of technologies really will drive that automation. And finally, obviously, the cloud will help enable these things. Thank you all.
Thanks, Dr. Unger.
Thank you.
We have allowed some time for a quick Q&A with Dr. Unga. If anyone has some questions, if you do have a question, if you could raise your hand, we've got one here, and so we're going to get a demo here now.
And a microphone will come magically.
There you go. Please wait for the mic.
Hi. I got a question around voice and how you see voice and the whole AI world, because I keep getting people sending me texts which are actually voice texts, which is quite frustrating because they've just spoken to their phone and I have to type my response.
I think that voice is going to be big. Again, people want to communicate seamlessly, easily, multi-channel. The normal communication mode for humans is voice. They expect to do that. Now, I like the voice to come in and show up as text so I can read it when I want. So it's multi-channel, voice in, text out. Current systems are, as you notice, a little bit flaky, but there's no reason you should have to text it back. Your phone will take voice in and send it back to text back to them. So I think the current systems are klutzy because the voice to text is crappy, but it's improving really rapidly, and everyone's going to expect to have a voice interface.
There's a question over here.
Oops. Yeah.
Given what you just said, when...
Microphones so people can hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, given what you've just said, when do you think AI will recognize regional accents? I have a major problem there.
Yeah, there's a general problem. These things are trained on data, and they work well when they have lots of data. If you are in any sort of a minority, that's a statistical term of not so much of your data, they're mostly pretty crappy. The companies like Google and Facebook are working hard to try and collect richer data sets to get different regional accents. But the problem is, as some of you are aware of, particularly in the next few years, it's still the case these things are massively trained on mainstream American accents, because they're often written by American companies expecting American piece there. It's not technologically hard to cover a broad range of accents, but there needs to be perceived market utility, extra money invested in it. I think you'll see it coming reasonably soon. They've gotten much better now, but I think it's still a huge problem that these are targeted, they're designed by one set of people, and it works well on the people it's designed for. Is a problem.
Question here in the front. Who has the microphone?
Microphone, microphone.
Come on, Jen.
Hi, thank you for a very interesting presentation. Do you feel that the ethical and privacy issues around AI are going to sort of inhibit progress, and perhaps sort of to what extent? Could we, if those were ignored, would we really rush ahead?
No, I think that ethical and privacy issues are huge, and I think most people, when you ask them, is it okay to share my data, they say no, and you say, well, is it okay to share my data if I get a 5-pence coupon? They say, of course, go for it. Right? So people are incredibly inconsistent, and in general, the privacy is somewhat existent in the EU and the UK, vaguely existent in the US, non-existent in China, so there are big regional differences. But no, I think by and large, at least in the Western world, the weirder thing is be a little bit careful about being too creepy. It's so weird that my phone suddenly says, hey, now that you're in London, don't you want to try this restaurant? It's like, okay, of course you know I'm in London, but did you have to tell me that? So it feels as if it's reading your email. So I think there's a little creepiness thing, particularly for people who are older than millennials. But I don't see any real restrictions causing lots of problems. In the US, the only one that's really been limiting things is HIPAA. We have a Health Protections Agency Act, really hard in the US to share medical data, which means it's really hard to collect. Collecting 500,000 breast cancer images required a superhuman effort of consenting vast numbers of people. But by and large, I think you're going to see lots of data being collected, and people will think, yeah, it's just sort of normal that if you walk all over London, there are cameras taking your image all the time, all over London. I don't think people mostly feel too inhibited by the cameras, but you could tell me.
We have a question over here.
Yes. We have a microphone coming.
Go on,
your exercise.
Hi there, Dr. Unger. Thank you very much for your presentation. My apologies because I watch too many movies. So if my question does seem actually quite pessimistic or incorrect, then my apologies. Basically, my view is that in regards to the presentation, what we're doing with AI, it seems to be quite similar to basically a child. And basically, these examples are the point where we're using them as, let's say, use cases or our user stories. And my feeling is that where do we now go in regards to the rulebook on AI and the point of no return? So how do we then know that what we're doing is actually the capabilities and our outputs and actions are actually for the correct purpose, if that kind of makes sense?
How do you know that outputs are do the correct purpose? I think one of the key points as you automate stuff, always have a feedback loop to check to make sure the automation does what you hope it does. There are wonderful or frighteningly horrible examples. In the US, the Washington, D.C. school district put together AI proprietary systems to decide who are high-performance teachers, who are low-performance teachers, and fired people based on it. No audit trail. Clearly made some incredible mistakes. Most, I think, gamed by once they started collecting the data. Here's the goal. I want to try and make sure my students all look like they're doing really badly at the beginning, make them do bad on the exam, help cheat on the exam so they do well at the end. That then leads to my getting a good bonus. So you need to be careful that once people know that they're being monitored, that things are done right. You need to make sure that these systems don't make stupid mistakes. You need to have an audit trail behind them. So I think it is going to be the case that lots of decisions get automated. It's not the case you're going to be able to man your help desks with humans. That's going to be like the old days of telephones when they thought about plugging in wires to connect every two people. It just wasn't going to happen. So I think automation's inevitable and mostly really good. But the question is, how do you monitor some sort of, like any process, is this automation doing the right thing? Are there certain groups, certain customer groups that because they are from somewhere horrible like Wales are not recognized? Right? It's real, sorry. Did I say something that was too personally connected? It's really easy to mess up and you've got some customer segment that you've really pissed off while helping most of them. If you're not checking to see how do the errors distribute across the customer base, really easy to do bad things.
Question here?
Yeah. Thank you. Here in the UK, we've got something called a digital twin for the City of London. Mm-hmm. How do you see AI starting to really drive smart solutions right across cities so that we can start to create superhuman environments where increasingly more of us will be living in the not too distant future? For me, that's really exciting. You've touched on so many things which are sort of tantalizingly showing us where the future will be and what it will look like. But how about when we scale it up on a city scale? What do you see that looking like?
Yeah, I would love to see smart cities. At the moment, I think cities are awesome but pretty dumb. What do I see? Even trivial things, traffic monitoring, really good information now about what's happening on the tube, on the streets there. So these things don't feel like AI. And I think most of the things that really help are going to not feel very smart. All it is I'm aware that there's a 32-minute delay here. If I route this way, I will get there with 5-minute delay. Those little things help improve the quality of life a lot. Other things, we're starting projects in Philadelphia where, well, not as much as London is full of CCT. What about noting there were problems with people dumping their trash where they shouldn't have put it, causing the neighbors to get pissed off and the people who collect the trash to get pissed off? Okay, this is a surveillance, this is a privacy issue, but these people are criminals. It's annoying. Little pieces like that where there's a tension between how much privacy do you get, how much is it okay to take your little trash and throw it where you're not supposed to do it. Lots of little monitoring, tweaks, feedbacks. I think getting more ways to let citizens be more involved and help. I think there's a lot of digital democracy. What I really, really like, most good cities now are taking vast amounts of their records, which are, after all, reasonably public, and putting them on the web and saying, hey, you're an app developer, we'll have a hackathon. Here's all of our data from the city. That's no privacy conditions, right, anonymized. Find out what we should do to do that. And someone then says, okay, here's a better pothole recognizer feedback system. So I think this sort of democratization of data and allowing that information not just to be done by cities, which are mostly under-resourced, at least the ones in the US do not have the money to hire you kind of people mostly. I know some of you work for cities, but the resources are pretty bad compared to a good bank. Put the stuff out there on the web, let other people try and help develop pieces there. So I think we'll see no radical changes for cities, but lots of small, just make life a little more fluid, a little bit better.
I'd say we've got time for one more question.
Pick it.
I see someone here. Can we get a microphone here? There you go.
Thank you very much. Hi there. I studied, one of my artificial intelligence books in university was from Stuart Russell.
Yes, I know Stuart.
And I recently saw a video that he promoted about the dangers of having the military using artificial intelligence, drones and explosive charges in those drones to attack a specific set of people. Not being too shadowy about the future, but how do we set the limit on what can we do with artificial intelligence?
I think the question, is artificial intelligence potentially dangerous? Sure. Are drones used to kill people? Sure. Just like guns are used to kill people and missiles are used. I think the question is, for all of these technologies, we have governments and rules and regulations for a reason. We have limits. You can't just go out and take a gun and go shooting it around in central London. There are lots of restrictions on these pieces. And I do think it's incredibly necessary, and governments are often a little bit slow to think about these, and international organizations. We do have conventions as to what's considered fair war or not fair war. And I think that drones need to be pulled, like everything else, into this discussion of what should we do, what should we not do. But you're not going to want to have drones zipping around the streets of London dropping packages on people's heads either. The same way of traffic laws. Sure. So I think these things are all tremendously dangerous, but the important thing for me is that there be a public discussion and that we actually consciously make laws and pass legislation. Where is this okay to use? Where is this not okay to use? So yeah, it's maybe a non-answer, but what else are you going to do? You're not going to ban drones and stop using them. At best, you're going to try and say what's considered an unreasonable, dirty-handed, like poisoning diplomats, and what's considered, if you believe in killing people, what's considered fair and open warfare. But you need to actually have that discussion and decide, right, we're going to abandon the death penalty, we're not going to kill people, whatever it is. It's got to be discussed and decided on. I think the only big problem I see is that most people aren't really aware of how fast the technology is changing. Most governments have not updated their regulations to be consistent with a world which is really different from the world of 20 years ago. But that's true of everything from patent laws to drones. I think we have a big problem, but that's very typical of it. And on that very negative note, I do want to note that it is the case these are going to make your lives vastly better in many, many ways. And you should go out and learn about the technology and enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thank you. I've got the clacker for me. Oops. Got it somewhere?
There we go. Click your hand off.
Thank you very much. I thought it was bad enough when he was talking about giving away free software. But when he then had a pop at the Welsh, and then he tried to take my clacker. Sincerely, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Thank you to all the speakers this morning and all the participants, in particular our customer speakers. I thought they were brilliant, the customer speakers today. Thanks very much.